Phoenix, Arizona. March 13, 1997. Dusk is settling over the desert. Families are sitting down to dinner. Children are still outside chasing the last light of the day. Drivers emerging onto highways heading home after an ordinary Thursday. Then people looked up. Stretching across the darkening sky was a massive formation of silent lights. Not one or two, not a distant flicker, a structured, enormous arrangement of glowing points moving steadily overhead. Thousands of people witnessed it. Emergency lines started ringing. Police dispatchers were overwhelmed. News stations began receiving frantic calls from viewers across the entire state. Even the governor of Arizona, a decorated military veteran, would later admit he saw something that night he simply could not explain. No crash, no landing, no official confirmation of what it was, just thousands of ordinary people standing in their driveways and backyards, staring upward at something none of them had ever seen before. So what exactly crossed the skies over Phoenix that night? March 13, 1997 began like any other Thursday in Arizona. Weather records from that day confirm mild temperatures, clear skies, and excellent visibility across the entire region. There was nothing in the forecast, nothing in the news, and nothing in the air to suggest that history was about to unfold overhead. Phoenix was the fifth largest city in the United States at the time, home to over 1 million residents. Millions more lived in surrounding communities including Scottsdale, Glendale, Tempe, Mesa, and Prescott. These were ordinary neighborhoods filled with ordinary people going about their ordinary lives. No one woke up that morning expecting to become a witness to one of the most debated aerial events in American history. But as daylight faded into twilight and the desert sky shifted from orange to deep blue, something changed. The first unusual reports began arriving, and they did not come from Phoenix itself. They came from communities much farther north. The first witnesses emerged from communities scattered across northern Arizona. Documented accounts describe an unusual formation of lights moving silently across the darkening sky. These lights behaved differently from anything witnesses recognized. They did not blink or flash the way conventional aircraft typically do. Instead, they held a steady glow, appearing evenly spaced as they drifted southward at a measured pace. Some witnesses believed the lights were attached to a single, enormous object passing overhead. Others believed they were watching separate lights flying in perfect formation. Opinions differed, but one detail appeared repeatedly across nearly every account: silence. Unlike military jets, helicopters, or commercial airplanes, whatever was observed that evening produced little or no audible engine noise. Witnesses standing outdoors reported hearing nothing at all as the lights passed above them. That absence of sound was striking, unexpected, and deeply unsettling to many who experienced it firsthand. That detail would become one of the most debated aspects of the entire case. As the lights continued their southward path, more people noticed them. Emergency dispatch centers began receiving phone calls from concerned residents who did not know what they were seeing. Television stations heard from worried viewers flooding their lines. Reactions varied widely across the growing crowd of witnesses. Some believed they were observing an experimental military aircraft conducting a classified test. Others feared some kind of emergency was unfolding above their city. And some believed they were watching something unlike anything ever built by human hands. The number of witnesses climbed rapidly into the hundreds and eventually into the thousands. Unlike many famous mysteries, this event was not built on a single eyewitness account. Entire neighborhoods described seeing the same lights moving overhead. Families watched together from their backyards. Police officers reportedly observed them while on duty. Pilots later discussed unusual aerial activity from that evening. The sheer scale of what was reported made it impossible to ignore. One of the most fascinating aspects of the Phoenix lights is this. witnesses did not all describe the same thing. Many believed they were seeing a gigantic single craft rather than separate aircraft flying in formation. Some estimated it stretched hundreds of feet across. Others claimed it appeared even larger than that. Researchers noted that estimating the size of objects at night is extremely difficult without clear visual reference points. Distances become hard to judge, and scale becomes nearly impossible to confirm. Even so, many witnesses insisted they observed a single solid object blocking out portions of the stars as it passed directly overhead. If accurate, that detail would suggest an object of truly extraordinary size, something far beyond any conventional aircraft in known operation at the time. But no conclusive physical evidence has confirmed the existence of such an object. Investigators remain divided, and that disagreement has only deepened the mystery surrounding that night. What made the Phoenix Lights genuinely different from most reported sightings was not just the number of witnesses, but who those witnesses were. These were not anonymous voices or fringe believers. They were teachers, doctors, police officers, business owners, families, commercial pilots, and military veterans. People with professional training, people who understood aircraft, people who had spent careers making careful observations. Many had never spoken publicly about anything unusual before that night. Some openly admitted they had always been skeptical of unidentified flying object claims, and yet there they were, describing the same sky. Researchers who studied the case emphasized that the sheer volume of independent accounts from completely unconnected individuals separated the Phoenix Lights from nearly every other famous sighting in recorded history. But those same researchers were careful to note something equally important. Multiple honest people can witness the exact same event and still interpret it in very different ways. That distinction would become absolutely critical as the investigation deepened. Several people managed to record the lights on home video cameras, and those recordings were eventually broadcast around the world. Viewers saw rows of bright lights suspended over the Phoenix area, some appearing stationary while others seemed to fade away one by one. The footage spread quickly, drawing international attention and reigniting public debate about what had actually occurred that evening. Investigators quickly pointed out an important limitation. Video cameras in 1997 had far lower resolution than today's equipment, and bright lights recorded at long distances often appear significantly different from what the human eye actually sees. Optical distortion, compression artifacts, and low light sensitivity all affected how the footage represented the original event. The recordings alone could not conclusively identify what was in the sky. Researchers cautioned against drawing firm conclusions from footage that lacked the technical clarity needed for definitive analysis. Nevertheless, the videos became some of the most discussed evidence in the entire case, studied and debated for decades that followed. Then came the official response. The United States Air Force stepped forward with an explanation. They stated that one widely observed group of lights seen later that evening was consistent with illumination flares dropped during a military training exercise. The aircraft involved belonged to the Maryland Air National Guard, conducting operations over the Barry M. Goldwater Range, located southwest of Phoenix. Military officials explained that these flares descended slowly beneath parachutes. As they drifted behind the Estrella Mountains, they appeared to vanish one by one, creating exactly the kind of sequential disappearing effect that many witnesses and cameras had captured. When investigators compared this explanation against several video recordings from that night, the match was genuinely compelling. The timing, the spacing, and the gradual fading all aligned with what descending flares behind a mountain ridge would produce. However, not everyone was satisfied, because investigators began noticing something the military explanation did not fully address. The reports from earlier that evening told a very different story. Researchers working to understand the Phoenix Lights knew that building an accurate timeline was essential. The earliest confirmed sightings began in northern Arizona shortly after sunset on March 13, 1997. Reports then traveled southward through Henderson, Nevada, continuing through Prescott, Prescott Valley, and Dewey before reaching the Phoenix metropolitan area and eventually extending toward Tucson. The remarkable consistency of that reported direction genuinely surprised many investigators. If all these witnesses were describing the same event, whatever they observed had traveled across hundreds of miles of American sky in a relatively short period of time. That geographic trail gave researchers something concrete to analyze. But as investigators mapped those accounts, one particular detail kept appearing across witness statements from completely different locations. It was not about what witnesses saw, it was about what they did not hear. Despite describing an object enormous enough to block out portions of the stars overhead, witnesses repeatedly and consistently reported that it moved almost completely in silence. Investigators examined the physical descriptions more closely. Some witnesses believed the lights were attached to a single triangular or boomerang-shaped craft. Others recalled stars disappearing behind what appeared to be a solid structure, moving silently overhead. Researchers studying visual perception noted that without clear reference points in a dark sky, separate lights can sometimes appear connected to the human eye. The brain naturally tries to fill in gaps between points of light, potentially creating the impression of a single, enormous object. However, that explanation did not convince every witness. Several insisted they could clearly distinguish the outline of a massive object against the night sky. As technology improved, investigators revisited the famous recordings using image analysis and computer modeling. Some concluded the later footage closely matched military flares descending behind the Estrella Mountains. Others argued the earlier witness accounts described something entirely different, something no flare explanation could reasonably address. Now that we have heard from the witnesses, it is time to separate what is confirmed from what remains disputed. Several facts are established beyond reasonable question. Thousands of people across Arizona reported unusual lights on the night of March 13, 1997. Emergency dispatch centers received numerous calls. Television stations documented eyewitness accounts in real time. Home video cameras captured bright lights hovering over the Phoenix area. And the United States Air Force officially confirmed that at least some of those lights were illumination flares dropped during a military training exercise conducted by aircraft from the Maryland Air National Guard over the Barry M. Goldwater Range. With those confirmed facts on the table, investigators then identified two primary theories. The first is the official military flare explanation, which closely matched several recordings captured later that evening. The second is the possibility of a massive unknown aircraft observed hours earlier, described consistently as triangular, completely silent, and unlike any conventional aircraft witnesses had ever encountered. Few figures became more central to the Phoenix Lights mystery than former Arizona Governor Fife Symington. Immediately after the incident, Symington publicly dismissed the sightings during a famous press conference, introducing a staff member dressed in an alien costume and drawing widespread laughter from the audience. Years later, however, Symington offered a dramatically different perspective. In multiple interviews, he stated that he personally observed something enormous that night, something unlike any conventional aircraft he had encountered throughout his military career. Those statements generated worldwide headlines almost immediately. Supporters argued his admission significantly strengthened overall witness credibility. Skeptics responded that personal testimony, no matter how sincere or how credible the individual, cannot by itself determine what was actually observed. That distinction leads directly to the broader scientific challenge this case presents. The entire investigation depends heavily on eyewitness testimony. There is no confirmed radar data, no recovered physical debris, and no verified photograph clearly showing a structured object crossing the Arizona sky. The Phoenix Lights fundamentally changed public discussion around unidentified aerial phenomena. Before March 13, 1997, many people viewed unidentified flying object reports as isolated stories involving only one or two witnesses. Suddenly, entire neighborhoods, police officers, pilots, military veterans, families, and business owners were all claiming they had witnessed something together. That collective scale elevated the conversation in a way no previous sighting had managed. Modern investigations using video enhancement software, reconstructed flight paths, and reviewed military exercise records have continued for decades since that evening. Researchers, journalists, and independent analysts have all revisited the same footage and testimony repeatedly. Despite all of this analysis, no single explanation has satisfied everyone. Some investigators conclude the military flare explanation reasonably accounts for the later video recordings. Others maintain that the earlier witness accounts describing a silent and enormous object moving across hundreds of miles of Arizona sky remain genuinely unresolved. And that distinction matters enormously as we approach our final conclusion. So where does all of this leave us? There is no universally accepted explanation for every report from March 13, 1997. According to official statements, military illumination flares explain at least part of what people observed that evening. According to many eyewitnesses, those flares do not explain everything they witnessed hours earlier. No official investigation has ever concluded that extraterrestrial spacecraft were involved. But equally, no official investigation has definitively disproved every eyewitness account describing an unusual aerial object moving silently across the Arizona sky. And that distinction matters enormously. The evidence does not point cleanly in one direction. It allows more than one reasonable interpretation, and that is precisely what makes this case so difficult to close. The greatest mysteries are sometimes not the ones with impossible answers. They are the ones where honest, credible people observed something real, where documentation exists, and where the truth still remains just out of reach. That uncertainty is precisely why the Phoenix Lights remain one of the world's most enduring aerial mysteries. Some mysteries end with an arrest, some end with a confession, some end with scientific certainty. The Phoenix Lights ended differently. Thousands of witnesses, hundreds of interviews, and decades of investigation have still left one question unanswered. What exactly crossed the skies over Arizona on the night of March 13, 1997? That question belongs to you now. Do you believe the military flare explanation fully accounts for what thousands of people reported? Or do you think some witnesses observed something that still has no confirmed answer? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We genuinely read them. If you found this investigation worth your time, please subscribe to Mysterious Crime. Like this video, share it with someone who loves a good unsolved mystery, and turn on notifications so you never miss what comes next. Coming up, we are investigating the Isdal woman and the Dyatlov Pass incident. 2 cases, 2 sets of questions, 0 easy answers. We will see you there.